So here we are again, chapter 3. Um, I'm just going to launch into it this time because my time tonight is just a little shorter than usual. So here we go. Chapter 3. Derek's breath caught as the shock of the sub-zero air caught in his lungs and fogged in the air when he finally exhaled as he walked outside. Ice and frost crusted the bottom of windows as the pane of glass failed to keep out the cold. While Sheridan had not specifically asked him to head out and look for her neighbors, it certainly beat the alternative of sitting on his behind as he waited for news. Jeremy walked around the corner in his heavy winter clothing. He nodded to Derek as he walked by and joined him. "All right, we'll be heading across the bridge and to the south first. There's a small enclave of cabins and houses not too far from here," said Derek. "What's past that?" asked Jeremy. Derek shook his head. "Campground and marina? It's normally closed this time of year. I mean, the owner could still be there, but it's easily 10 k's down and at the very end of the road." "No chance they could have wintered there?" he asked another. Derek thought for a moment and then shook his head. "I doubt it. Even before all this, the drive down that way was nasty. You needed a 4x4 to make it, and half the time the plow never even went that far. I think they shut it down at the end of the first hint of snow. Maybe after hunting season ends at the latest, and then they check on it from time to time, but after winter sets in, it's abandoned. Anyone still down there is more than able to handle this by themselves." "So we're not risking it," finished Jeremy for him. "I'm guessing we're going as far as the camps and homes that are probably occupied, and then we'll head back." Derek led them out into the driveway. One very bored Terrence had kept the driveway clear of snow despite no traffic on the road, let alone in the driveway. Fuel was simply too difficult to get and too precious to squander unless they absolutely had to. Derek's breath frosted in the air, and he rubbed his hands together to keep them warm. "Damn, it's cold out here." Jeremy was hopping up and down and shifting from side to side in the same effort. "Oh my God, I think a certain part of my anatomy just shattered." Derek snorted and shook his head. He walked over to his SUV and slid into the driver's seat. Jeremy moved over to the front passenger side and got in. When Derek pulled out and headed down the south road, he came to two conclusions. One, I was crazy to drive here. And, moments later, two, I still have no idea how Sheridan drove that little smart car from Lively to Panache Lake Road and then down to the farm in at least a foot of snow, even if it had still been loose and fluffy. The first conclusion, well, if he had not made it here, the point would be moot. With the power out and the general infrastructure collapsed, he was actually quite happy with where he was. He would never have made it home in Garson. Instead, they would have still been in Blind River. Outside of friends who were likely gone for the holidays anyway, they would have been alone and separated from family that had practically adopted the both of them. And I'm definitely not going to complain about the relative comfort of Sheridan's home. He hoped others would be as lucky. If they were not, then he had an ugly feeling that they wouldn't find very many survivors. Assuming we find any survivors at all. As the little SUV pulled into the closest subdivision full of year-round cabins and small houses, the first thing they all noticed was the smoke rising from the chimneys of most of the homes. And that was a good sign, although the other two houses were cold and seemed deserted. When he stopped, a few people came out of their houses. One man walked right up to the driver's side window and Derek rolled down the window. "How you doing out here?" Derek asked. "Could be better, but definitely could also be worse," he answered. His eyes grew wide as he noticed who it was. "Derek! Seeing you just made my day." "How much in supplies do you have?" asked Derek, racking his memory for the man's name. "Not a lot," he answered. "Why?" I've a bad feeling this might last a while. Why don't you take what you need and what we can share and come up to our place?" Derek looked around. "We could send a sleigh, and forgive me, I can't seem to remember your name." "You never do. It's Rick." "Give me the night and we'll pack it up. Come back out early tomorrow," Rick answered. "If you had Terrence with you, he'd have told you that." "He did," answered Derek, and Rick rolled his eyes. "We'll come out tomorrow. Stay safe. Wish I could stay and talk, but we have other places to check out. No other houses that way but that camp, and they've locked it up before heading south for the winter. We're at the end of the road here." The others who were further that way, Rick pointed down the side road that branched off, came up here to stay with us. You're sure there's no one else? Asked Jeremy. All accounted for, he answered. Derek's eyes thinned. Rick owned the marina. And he was definitely not south like he claimed to be. That it was standing there in front of him and lying through his teeth and seemed more nervous than he should have been. But Derek nodded and then turned to Jeremy. Let's head back to your farm and we'll draw up a plan to come get them for tomorrow. I don't want to use too much of my gas, but the way things were in town, I don't have the foggiest when we'll be able to get more. We'll come up when we can, said Chris, but do yourself a favor. Don't head further down the road. Derek shifted in his seat and without turning his head followed where Rick was looking. There was a shadow. He couldn't see it clearly, but it was enough to make Rick more than a little jumpy. Derek looked closer at him and he finally recognized what he was seeing on the man's face. Fear. Derek took a breath, not dropping the smile, but the quick double blink in Rick's direction hopefully told the other man that he understood the message Rick was trying to tell him. Whoever was behind that building was trouble. On our doorsteps already, thought Derek. God damn it. All right then, said Derek. We will see you tomorrow then. I'm pretty sure Terrence will want to check up on you himself. Help is coming. Read between the lines, Rick, thought Derek. Rick visibly relaxed. Great. Fantastic. Derek rolled up the window, and while he hated to leave the others without help, he knew there was absolutely no way to help them with only Jeremy and nothing but their bare hands and an old Jeep. He reversed and turned around. As he drove back up the road, he kept one eye on the road and the other in his rearview mirror. A blonde woman walked out and straight to Rick. Judging by the others with her, she wasn't there to just chat. He lost sight of them after he went around the corner, and he blew out a breath. Okay, what the hell was that? Asked Jeremy. Trouble, answered Derek as he stopped the Jeep. Real trouble. The kind that crops up when there's no one to stop it. Water. Daniel leaned on the desk, tapping keys on his BlackBerry to encourage the tiny dragon on the screen to move through the level when the screen went black. Moments later, the screen lit up again, but with a message saying, "We're sorry. We're experiencing an issue with your connection. Please try again later." He tapped on the app again. His brow crinkled as the same message popped up. Daniel closed the app and slid the phone into his jacket pocket, looking around with a sigh. One janitor had left a bucket on the floor with some caution tape and orange cones to warn people away from a slippery patch on the floor from a leak in the skylight above. Each drop of water dripping from 4 stories to the floor into the bucket echoed off the Spartan cement and brick walls. A blizzard howled outside City Hall. The snow piled into drifts, changing and shifting as the wind drove the snow into dunes. If not for how cold it was outside, and that the drifts were pure white or black dark of frozen ground, it could be mistaken for a desert just past the floor-to-ceiling windows. The first pop, more like an abrupt crack from above, thundered through the open lobby. Daniel stiffened, the sense of icy fingers on his spine having nothing to do with the weather outside. That couldn't be, ran through his mind first, and then it repeated. It was. Gunfire, his eyes widened, repeating, semi-automatic. What are you? Daniel recognized a shocked cry of Victoria's assistant, but for the man cut off in a scream as more gunfire met his question. Daniel flattened his palms on the counter of the security station and, using his arms to give himself momentum, vaulted over to stand behind the counter. He peered into the computer screens, flicking his gaze from one camera feed to another. The soldiers were sweeping each floor, each room, and, to his horror as it played out on the different screens, shooting everyone they encountered. Police, office worker, one hapless city councilor in their office, it didn't matter. My God, why? Daniel couldn't answer his own question, but there was a clatter of footsteps to his right. Pressing himself into the space between counters and underneath where the cabinets had this tiny space just out of sight, Daniel struggled to calm his panic breathing. He knew If he looked into a mirror, the whites around his irises would be obvious. Daniel pushed himself to draw slow, even breaths, forced himself to work through the facts. The first one was that he was alone. He was off duty, so he didn't even have his sidearm. He was only one person against a large squad of trained soldiers. Secondly, he had no idea who they were, who sent them. Were they even who they claimed to be in order to get access to Tom Davies Square? His gut told him, no, they can't be. No Canadian soldier, if legitimate, would fire on their own people for no reason. Even if they had a reason and orders, they would question the legitimacy of shooting unarmed Canadians, especially those representing duly elected official positions. That meant they weren't who they claimed to be. And if they weren't who they claimed to be, then he had nothing to predict their next move either. Also, since he had come to that conclusion, as an officer of the peace sworn to protect the citizens of the city and enforce the laws, he had a duty to fight them and die in the process without making a dent on their numbers, he thought. Small consolation there. The best idea would be to lay low, gather intel, and then make a plan. He silently blew out a breath. His priority was to find Victoria Piacentini. If she still lived as mayor of Sudbury, she was the last and highest ranked duly elected official in the city, unless he found one of the members of parliament. He had no idea where to look, or if anyone still lived. So that meant Victoria had to be protected. As far as he knew, she still lived. He had not heard her scream, and he would have, since her office was close to the ledge on the 4th floor. Nor had he heard any other gunfire since those soldiers moved off the 4th floor, which meant she was alive. For now. He crinkled his brow. Why would they leave her alive and not the others? She's the mayor. Daniel let his head fall back gently to the back of the cabinet. She's the mayor. That's why she's still alive. So, rescue the mayor from lunatics with guns, he thought. Not how I thought I would spend my Christmas at all. Told you chapter 3 was going to be full of action. So, unfortunately, that's it for tonight because I actually have to go take care of a few things for tonight and we actually started late. So I will catch you tomorrow with chapter 4.